Welcome back to the Dynamic Soccer Coaching Substack. This is part 2 in a series called Defining Your Game Model. Last week in part 1, we defined game model as a coach's idea or ideas for how we want our teams to play. And when we think about game model like that, we see that every coach actually already has one. Every coach has a game model, whether we know it or not. And then we also categorize 3 basic types of game models: a style-based game model, a phase-based game model, and then finally a thirds-based game model. This week in part 2, what we're going to try to do is define the game behind the game model. What are we talking about when we're talking about soccer? What is the game in an objective sense? That's what we're going to think about. Here we go. As we start to think about our game models, we need to separate 2 distinct concepts in our minds. The first concept is our own specific game model, and then the second concept is the game itself. Talking about the first concept, or our game model, we need to say that our game models are going to be subjective. They're going to be unique to each of us as individual coaches. My game model is going to be different than your game model, and that's okay, because mine is some kind of combination of my values and my personality mixed with who my players are in my specific context. And all of those things are going to be different than what you're going to have in your specific context. So we should expect that game models can be very different from one to the next. The second concept, though, the game itself, that's actually going to be objective. It's going to be the same for everyone, whether we're talking about 5-year-olds or 50-year-olds, men or women, amateurs or professionals in Africa, America, or Asia, whenever, wherever, whomever. We all play and coach the same exact game according to the same exact laws of the game. Of course, each local competition is free to kind of add additional rules and regulations to govern their specific context, but the fact remains, the fundamental reality, the objective elements of the game are actually the same for everyone. And this distinction is important because we need to base our game models, which are going to be subjective, on the game itself, which is objective. Some game models are actually going to be better than others. Game model ideas based on the true reality, the objective nature of the game, just are going to be better than game models which are based on some other kind of maybe misunderstanding of the game. So, what is the objective reality of soccer? What is a correct understanding of the game itself? I'm going to argue, objectively speaking, soccer just is the interactions between the ball, the objective, the teams, and the space, or what I like to call simply the acronym BOTS. The first letter in the BOTS acronym is B, which stands for the ball. Soccer is a game that's played with one ball, and this ball is primarily moved around the field with our feet, but also with any other parts of our body except for our arms and hands. The exception to that, of course, is that the goalkeeper can use her hands if the ball is inside the 18-yard box, and we can also use our hands if there's a foul and we need to move the ball back to its proper restarting place, or if there's a throw-in, we can use our hands to throw the ball in. But in general, we have to play the game with our feet and not using our arms and hands. And this fact kind of separates soccer from other team invasion games like basketball and hockey, because we have to play the game with the same parts of our body that also move ourselves around the field. In basketball, they play primarily with their hands and then they move themselves around with their feet and legs. And hockey, of course, they play primarily with sticks. But in soccer, we play with our feet, and that's also the parts of our body that we move ourselves around with. And that's one of soccer's unique difficulties, and maybe even best qualities as well. That's one of the beautiful things about soccer. So, when we play, what exactly are we trying to do with the ball? Well, that's actually the second letter of the BOTS acronym, the O, or the objective. When we play soccer, in an objective sense, we're trying to score goals to win the game. Virtually every time we play soccer, we're trying to score one more goal than our opponent does. There are occasional times where we may be playing for a draw or a tie, but those are few and far between. If we can score one more goal than our opponent, then by definition, we're going to win the game, and that's our objective. Sometimes coaches will say that the objective of the game is joy or player development or maybe even something like community building. And all of these things are good, and they really can be good byproducts of playing the game. We want our players to enjoy and grow and be part of a healthy community, but in an objective sense, we play the game in order to win. That is our objective. So, when I say we play the game, who exactly is the we that I'm talking about? Well, that's actually the T in our BOTS acronym, the teams. There are two teams who compete against each other to win each game. Our team plays against the opposition. We're trying to win and they're trying to win. We can expect that for everything we do, they will respond, and we should always respond likewise to anything they try to do. Our team has 11 players, or if you coach 99, you have 9 players, or 7v7, or 3v3, or however many, but at the end of the day, our team has the same number of players as their team. And sometimes when we talk about the game, we can take a kind of radically player-centered view. We zoom in extremely close upon an individual player and then try to make sense of the game from that vantage point. But I don't think that's the best way to understand the game. Of course, we want to develop and empower every single individual player. I think the best way to do this, though, is actually to think about each player in the context of the team. Maybe a helpful kind of concept we could use here is to think of the player as a contributor to the team. Objectively, soccer is a team game, which means the team has to come before each player. This may seem controversial, but it's the most objective way to think about the game itself. It may not be the most popular view, but it is the most logical. Now that we've talked about the ball, the objective, and the teams, we are ready to consider the S in the BOTS acronym, which is the space. This is where every part of the game interacts. The ball and the objective and the teams, they all exist in the space. Teams play the game in the space, which it really is the field. That's what I'm talking about. And this space can be as large as 130 by 80 yards and as small as 100 by 50 yards. There's always a midfield line in the space as well as an 18-yard box on each end. While it's probably incorrect to say that the space is the most important element of the game, it is nevertheless interesting to note that the very first law of the game in IFAB's Laws of the Game is called the field of play. This shows the importance of recognizing that the game itself is actually bound by spatial limits. Soccer is always and everywhere a game of space. And this space will change based on where teams move and where the ball is, where the goals are, and so on. All of the interactions between the B and the O and the T and the BOTS acronym. But space will always be available since the game is played in such a large space. Perhaps the most helpful way to characterize or maybe categorize all of this space is by thirds and channels. There are 3 thirds of the field: the defensive third, the middle third, and the final third. And there are 5 channels: the left and right wings, the center, and then the left and right half spaces. Well, now we've talked about the BOTS acronym, the ball, the objective, the teams, and the space. And at this point, we need to ask ourselves, how do all of these things fit together? The most important part of the objectivity of the game of soccer is not centered on any single element. Not the ball, not the objective, not the teams, not the space, but on the interactions between all the elements. The interactions between the ball and the teams in the space as each team tries to use the ball to achieve the objective or score one more goal than their opponent. That just is what soccer is in an objective sense. And we can't really understand soccer if we focus only on one of the elements. If we try to think about just the ball without reference to the teams or the space, we're not going to get it. If we try to think about just one of the teams without thinking about the ball or the space or the opposition team, we're not going to get it. And if we try to think only about the space without reference to the ball or any of the teams, again, we're not going to get it. In other words, under no circumstances should we separate in our minds the ball, the objective, the teams, and the space when we're trying to understand the game. We can, of course, make distinctions between all of these elements because they're not the same. But what we need to always try to keep in our minds is that soccer just is the interactions between all of these elements. If we can get that, then we can understand the holistic, true, real, objective nature of the game. If we don't do that, or if we only focus on one element at the expense of the others, or if we try to focus on something else that's outside of those elements, we're going to misunderstand the nature of the game. I know all of this has been a little theoretical so far, but over the next few weeks, I hope to show you all that basically everything flows from this objective understanding of the game. Since soccer just is the interactions between the bots, then that changes everything about how we define our game models and how we design our training methods and even how we deliver our coaching magic. For now, I want to say again, our game model ideas, whatever they are, must still be based on the objective reality of the game itself. Put another way, when we think about our game model ideas, we need to acknowledge that they aren't really anything other than how we want our team to play in the space with the ball against the other team in order to win the game. So, next week, we're going to consider how to use the concept of the team as the starting point for building an effective game model. We've defined game model and the game itself so far, and now we're ready to look at a few different ways that we might want our teams to play. I hope it will be a little more practical, but at this early point, I think it's so important for us all to be on the same page. Viewing soccer as the interactions between the bots really will change how we define, design, and deliver our coaching. Please stick with me. I promise we will get kind of out of the theoretical clouds and down to the field where we can practice as quickly as we can. Thanks again for joining me so far. I appreciate everyone who's reached out with kind words. I'll keep doing this for as long as youth soccer coaches find it helpful. I'm looking forward to the next one. See y'all then.